Hello and welcome to our weekly Parshas Shiur with commentary of the Alshich College. As I say every week, if you'd like to sponsor the Shiur, then you simply, and because we get no sponsors this week, I made it very big just in case that's the reason people aren't seeing this. YY@rabbiYY.com. If you want to have the sponsor for Simcha or to commemorate a loved one, then please be in touch at YY@rabbiYY.com. Okay, it is a brand new Parshas, a brand new Sefer of the Chumash, Parshas Bamidbar. So as normally for a few seconds, I suppose you could keep it up longer if you freeze it or take a screenshot. I'm going to put the psukim they're going to analyze in Bamidbar right at the beginning on the screen, and then please take a screenshot or have your Chumash ready when I return, and we can start to see what the Alshich has to say on Parshas Bamidbar. So if I do this, and then I do that, there it is. So let's read it straight together, so we know what we're talking about. V'yadaber Hashem al Moshe, and Hashem speaks to Moshe, Bamidbar Sinai, in the desert Sinai, Ba'oil Moed, in the tent of the assembly, I think they call it in translation, Be'echad l'chodesh, and the first of HaChodesh Hasheni, Be'echad l'chodesh Hasheni, in the first of the second month, Nisan Iyar. So the first of the year, the Shana Hasheni is in the second year, the Tzis and Meretz of the Exodus. So interesting. So now the obviously about Nisan in the first year, and therefore he speaks to him in the second month. So that's 13 months after the Exodus. Then he speaks to Moshe from the Mishkan. And he says the following thing: Su'u is Rosh Kaladas B'nai Yisrael. And the word Su gives the English or the Latin translators of the Bible the title that they chose for the Sefer Bamidbar. Of course, we call it Bamidbar, but they call it numbers. And the reason is because of this word Su'u, count. It's Rosh Kaladas B'nai Yisrael. Count the heads of all of the Jewish people, the Mishpasim according to their families, the Beis Avosim according to the father's house, Bamisper Shemas according to the numbers of their names, Kol Zochar, all males that go below some according to their skulls. Very strange language. From 20 years and upwards, that's when somebody becomes legally responsible as far as the heavenly court is concerned for his actions. And it's also the age at which you have to go to the army. Kol Yotzei Yisrael, each one who went to the army or the regiments of the Jewish people, and it should be counted you and Aaron. Fine. Now, it then says that each of the tribes, the heads of the tribes, send representatives for this counting as well. And then it goes on to say the numbers of those who are counted. And then I stop sharing. So please take a picture of that. And if you want to stay live with me and just all the way through, then fine. And if not, you can come back at a later time. Okay, stop sharing. Now, the things that we just read are obviously problematic. The language is very, very strange. And what's really going on there is obviously very strange too. But let me read to you what Rashi tells us here. The whole idea of counting, which we alluded to before as being critical in the eyes of the non-Jewish people, non-Jewish world, so critical that they named the book after it. From a Jewish point of view, it's a little bit, I think, more complicated than that. So here's what Rashi says, the counting of the Jewish people here at this point. Rashi says, Bamidbar Sinai, and I'm using my little art scroll, which is always good, wonderful commentaries. Mitochi Bosom, although I often disagree, the Alshich disagrees with the translation often, but anyway, let's not be unkind. Mitochi Bosom Lefonov, because of the love that Hashem feels towards the Jewish people, Monum Oisam Kolsha, he continually counts them. But then Rashi qualifies that to tell you that the counting of them is not quite as continuous as that. Rather, the counting of them is always at the momentous moments in Jewish history, they are counted. Now, the normal explanation or elaboration of Rashi is it's a bit like a collector, perhaps a numerist or a philatelist, somebody who collects coins or stamps, who takes out, as maybe you know, people like that, maybe you are one of those people who collects various things. They often take out their collection and look at the pieces, hold lovingly the pieces. It's a demonstration of love and affection. To be counted by, as it were, the collector is a demonstration that every piece counts and every piece is precious to him or her. In this case, it's Hashem. So the counting, the act of counting, is an act of affection. So here is the Rashi is continuing his comment. Sorry, I missed a bit out. Mitzrayim, when they exited Egypt at the Exodus, then Monam were counted then. That was momentous in Jewish history, very dramatic. When they made the golden calf and then people died as a consequence, then they were counted. And then, this is a very interesting few words of Rashi. When they fell on the eagle, they were counted. Monam leda ha noisri, to know the numbers that were left over. Well, obviously it knows. Hashem knows all. Hashem doesn't have to count. He automatically knows. But it's to let us know these counting us is to show again that we're precious to him. Because when he comes to make his presence rest on the Jewish people, Monam are counted as well. So be'echad b'Nisan hukam Mishkan, the first of Nisan, the Mishkan was set up. And the next month, first of the next month, they were counted. And I can't go any further without pointing out that Rashi's comment here is going to be challenged by the Alshich, because the Shekhinah, the presence of God, appeared in Rosh Chodesh Nisan, and so that's a full year. But they were counted only a month in Rosh Chodesh Iyar, a month later. So if it's a demonstration of love and affection for them, why should they not be counted in Rosh Chodesh Nisan of the second year? When the Mishkan was set up, the Mishkan was dedicated, and then the Shekhinah, the presence of God, appeared there. That's the moment to count the Jewish people. Why a month later? And it's an inevitable question. But there's another inevitable question, which I'm going to ask on the Rashi from the Ramban. The Ramban says something here which is absolutely astonishing and incredibly interesting, because Rashi is challenged for his words that he writes here in the first pasuk that we don't have. What I've read to you is Rashi in the first pasuk that we do have. However, there is an earlier version of Rashi which we don't have in our editions, that the Ramban quotes in full and is very distressed by it. So let me tell you what the Ramban's version of Rashi said. When it says Su'u, this mysterious word, which, as I said, provoked the non-Jewish world to name the book, the book of the Chumash, Bamidbar, as numbers, he points to the word Su'u. Now, Su'u can mean number, absolutely, but it means other things too. If you remember the story of Yosef when he is in prison with Sarah Mashkim and Sarah Oifim, the butler, and the wine butler and the baker, then of course they both have dreams. The wine butler reports his dream to Yosef, and he says the three branches and three tendrils of the grapevine with the grapes on it indicate 3 days you've been in prison. 3 days from now, Pharaoh is going to take you and give you your job back. Fine. And of course, that's exactly what happens. But the word he uses is the word Su'u. Yiso, as Roshka, he's going to lift your head up from being cast down, sort of thing, and give you your job and give your position back. And you remember when the Sarah Oifim, when the baker hears such a nice explanation of the dream, and he tells his story, there's also the figure 3 occurs in that. He's carrying 3 baskets of bread for Pharaoh's table. And Yosef interprets the dream and says the 3 baskets of bread indicate 3 days. You've been in prison 3 days from now. Pharaoh's going to lift your head up. Here's the word Su'u again. Yiso is Roshka. Lift up your head from its normal location. In other words, it's going to behead you. You're going to be executed. So the word Su'u means either something positive or something negative. To elevate somebody, to lift his head up, or to lift his head off. Up or off. And the Ramban's Rashi, his version of Rashi says, when it says Su'u, Rashi says, why does it say Su'u? Kamosha, listen to the Hebrew, Kamosha omala kustener, as you would say to the executioner, Yusuf Roshka, cut off his head. As indeed, that's exactly Yosef's use of the word when he's interpreting the dream of the Sarah Oifim, of the baker. And the Ramban says, why on earth does Rashi translate this word, Su'u, as being in the negative? Execute them. Well, Yiso means the same as it meant. The Jewish people have been counted here by God. The Rashi version we have, it's an indication of love and affection. But Rashi translates it as though you will lift their heads off. So the Ramban struggles with why on earth he translated that way when there's a positive translation available for you. So to elevate you, surely being counted by God is an elevation, a salute, as it were, a smile from heaven. The question I would love to say is why it's actually the Ksav ciphers. And the Ksav cipher says something tremendously interesting. He said, or he says, when the Jewish people are counted, where, of course, the book of Bamidbar is full, I should have said this at the beginning, is full of real drama, incredibly, I mean, actually, if you can have a favorite sefer in the Chumash, I think probably Bamidbar would be mine. There's so much to learn from Bamidbar, and so much, it's so much more approachable, I think. The stories, as the Ramban himself says, of what went on in Bereshis are ultimately way beyond us. But the story of the rebellion of Korach, which appears in Bamidbar, the idea of rebelling against the leader, I'm afraid that is a very common theme that permeates Jewish society and Jewish communities frequently, or maybe I should say not infrequently. And therefore I can relate to that. And there's so much here, Pinchas and the Zealot and on all the rest of the book. And of course, the spies bringing back the bad report, the failure of the nerve of the Jewish people. And here is the interesting thing. When the spies bring back a bad report, then it's the second calamity the Jewish people historically have performed in the relationship with Hashem. The first one was, of course, the golden calf. Why is it the Jewish people brought back a bad report? The Ksav Sefer says a very intriguing thing. He says it's not for one moment that the greatest of the Jewish people who were selected to go and be the spies to look at the land of Israel, it's not that they doubted for one moment that Hashem could give them the land of Israel. They'd witnessed at first hand what Hashem had done to Mitzrayim. It's not a question of could he, but would he? To which she'll say, says the Ksav Sefer, where was the room for doubt? Hashem had promised it to Avram, he promised it to Yitzchak, he promised it to Yaakov. So why on earth would you be in any doubt that he would fulfill his promise? And the answer is, well, I've got a good reason to doubt it. Because since Hashem offered that promise to the Jewish people had betrayed that promise by the very making of the golden calf. And the making of the golden calf might have changed everything. The whole deal, the whole contract between Hashem and the Jewish people. That's why, says the Ksav Sefer, Rashi, in the Ramban's version, says it's as though he would he would say to the executioner, cut off their heads. The counting of the Jewish people, as we've already explained, is an act of affection and love. When? Well, as we said, this is in the second year. The second year and the second month. And the action of counting a demonstration of love after they've made the golden calf. So that was a clear demonstration that Hashem had forgiven them for the making of the golden calf, no? That's why they're being counted, as Rashi says. Every moment of drama, every moment of great historical significance, then they're counted. Not because God needs to count them. Hashem doesn't need a calculator to let them know that we are beloved of Hashem. We still are his special people. Now, that idea is an idea which is going to be made much, or will make much worse, any failure that the Jewish people make subsequently. Because if the Jewish people had brought back, the spies had brought back a bad report, the Jewish people had lost faith and wanted to go back to Egypt, which of course is what happens, and Hashem hadn't counted them after they did something wrong, they could justify it. It would be reasonable to assume that they lost faith in themselves, and they felt that they had blown it and they could no longer rely on Hashem. Again, not that he couldn't, but he wouldn't. But if after the golden calf, then Hashem has counted them, it's a demonstration that he loves them. So therefore, if they make that mistake after Hashem's counted them, the act of counting in and of itself makes their sin exponentially worse, because he's told you he still loves you. You've got no reason to doubt that. He's shown you that he's still on your side. So that's why Rashi says there, Kamosha Amal Kustaner, as you would say to the executioner, cut off their heads. Why take the negative? Because the act of counting, it has a dual possibility of dual outcomes. Either to encourage the Jewish people to show them, wow, he still loves us, or to allow them to be still riven with self-doubt. Ignore the fact Hashem has said, don't worry, I've forgiven you for that. And then get it wrong. Then when you get it wrong, having been counted, having been reassured by Hashem that the slate is wiped clean, then that makes your offense a far greater offense. So says the Ksaf Sofer and the Ramban, and I think that's a very, very important point. The Alshich has got different things to say. So if you have got your screen version there, or if you've got your Chumash in front of you, I think it would be useful to have a look. Now, he asks a lot of questions here. We're not going to have time for all of them, but maybe we'll get in a couple and we'll see some incredible. Now, you think he's going to take us into Kabbalistic territory again this week in Sefer Bamidbar. And we'll be talking a lot about angels. Anyway, Roy Lossim Levi starts off with as he often does, with, it's appropriate that you should consider, which there's almost a tiny smile, almost sarcasm there. Have you been thinking about this? And I've told you many times before, the brilliance of the Alshich is not only his answers, which are beyond brilliant, but also the questions. Why didn't you think of this? And it might be nice, if you want, to pause again and just look at the question, look at the psukim that we read through before, and see if you can spot some of the Alshich's questions. You know you're getting to a very high level in analysis of the Chumash if you can spot the problems that the Alshich sees. And if you've not paused the button, I'm going to tell you what they are. Good. Roy Lossim Leib should consider. Lama Hadiana B'Mokam HaMira. So what's the first problem? V'yidaber Hashem Moshe Bamidbar Sinai. Oh, really? Oh, God spoke to Moses in Midbar Sinai, in the desert of Sinai. Ah, and not in Alaska. Oh, I was wrong all along. The joke is really quite there. It's obvious, and the Alshich often makes that with quite a lot of humor. If it's so obvious, then why is it saying this? Where else could God speak to Moshe in Bamidbar Sinai? So he says, one, would you have spotted that one yourself? Anyway, would I have? Lama Hadiona Mokim Hamira. Why does it have to tell us the place that God spoke to Moses? Mashallah Asakin Bazils Mokim Zeh. Don't say that anywhere else. It's obvious. So it doesn't have to say it. Two, Omer Ba'al Moed. And then I suppose the question just gets even more ridiculous. And he spoke to him from the Oil Moed. He spoke to him from the Mishkan, from the Holy of Holies in the Mishkan. And again, that's a sort of like, yeah, really? I would never have known that. Well, of course you would. So why does it say it? There's no such thing in the Torah as a word that's extra or expression that's extra. So God spoke to Moses in the desert. I see. And from the Oil Moed. Yes. So why does it say this? So again, the Alshich says with a little smile. And who doesn't know that God spoke to him from the Oil Moed? Three. And then, having now dealt with the geographic problems that the Psukim present us with, or the first pasuk presents us with, and it goes on to the chronological problem that the Psukim deal with. It says that in the first of the second month, why is it so important to tell us when it was that God counted them down to the detail, whether it was in the second year? And also it says in the second year, when it didn't suggest in the second year, the second month of the second year, it says from the second year of them going out from Egypt. I definitely wouldn't have noticed that. Well, it says in Restaurant, well, I think we don't need those words. So why does it have to say that? Omro Su'ulis Rosh. Now, Su'ulis Rosh, count their heads or elevate their heads, depending where we go. So why is it that the Rebbe uses the word counting, which is a euphemism, or has other meanings for elevate, which I suppose I've just presented you with an answer for that one. And Zavov, should we do 6? As they're not going out to the army, the counting is not going out to the army. It says counting them to 20 years of age and up, all are going out to the army. They're not going out to the army. They're not in the army at the moment. So what's the army got to do with this? So these are the questions the Alshich is going to ask and Rashi. And as I said to you before we even started looking at Alshich inside, the main problem the Alshich is going to deal with is Rashi's explanation that it's a sign of loving the Jewish people when something momentous happens. But in the second month, nothing momentous happened except that we're counted. What was momentous that happened in the second year, in the first month, in the first day of the second year, Rosh Chodesh Nisan, that's when the Shekhinah, the presence of God, after the golden calf, presented itself or appeared in the Mishkan. That was momentous, and that, says the Alshich, when they should be counted. So the Alshich then goes on to another thing. No, you've not got that in front of you. I didn't put it up. But when it comes to the counting of the tribes, or the naming of the tribes, it's not the right order. We all know which orders came. It's their birth orders: Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehudi, Issachar, etc. But here it changes the order, and that's something which is really going to interest the Alshich, and it's going to take us into the Kabbalistic territory that I warned you about before. But I think we can, in a sense, reduce it to our own lives as well. It can resonate with our own lives as well. There's going to be a message, an important message here for us. And apart from that, and this is me, as one of his greatest Hasidim and devotees, is going to suggest an answer which is frankly baffling. However, we'll soon see that he doesn't leave us baffled for too long. So let me read a little bit of the Alshich here. So here's my Alshich, which I notice is starting to fall to bits. I tend to go through an Alshich every 2 years or so. But anyway, so let's see. However, I want to tell you something which is really, really important. And that is, Es Mispar Shevet God ben Shimon li Yehuda. If you look at verse 20, no, I didn't put it on, so I'm going to read it to you now. I suppose, which would be not very sophisticated. But if I put this up at the screen, can you see that? Yes, you can. Good. Can you see that? It says Reuven. Reuven. There, you see that? So here is it says that Reuven. It's not really focusing very well, is it? Maybe it's my angle. Reuven. And then it says, so this is page 729 if you've got an actual Chumash. Reuven, Shimon, right? So it's talking about the tribes, right? Reuven, Shimon, Levi? No, Gad. And then Yehuda. No, Levi's not part because they're not part of the counting. But Reuven and Shimon, and I should say Yehuda, but it puts Gad in there. Yehuda, Issachar, Zvulun. It's the order is not the chronological order of the birth of the Jewish people, even if we abstract Levi, because they weren't counted in the same way as the Jewish people. Okay, so why is that like that? Now here we go into Kabbalistic territory. I'm just wondering, should I give you a quick heads up, as they say, of what's coming? When we stood at Mount Sinai, which was the year before we made the golden calf, as the Apostle tells us way later in Devarim, we see Hashem descending. We reach the level of prophets and prophetesses, and each Jew looks up and sees the presence of God coming down to the mountain, to Har Sinai, surrounded by angels. Now, I don't exactly know how you're going to, or how I'm going to deal with what I'm about to say, because sometimes we describe something which is so beyond us. For example, when Moshe himself comes down from Mount Sinai, his face shines. Now, I don't know what it means. I mean, I know that it means that his connection to the physical world had listened to such a degree that he's almost completely spiritual. His face shines, sort of like an angel. I suppose I get that. But sometimes people have aspirations for a spiritual level which are so great that you just look and think, well, I could never do that. I could never be that. If your example, I'll give you a dramatic example. Rabbi Akiva, who when he was being tortured to death by the Romans and said Shema, and his Talmidim said, how can you be thinking and speaking of Torah even now? He said, I've been practicing and preparing for this my entire life, as it were, welcoming this. Rav Nachman Bretzner said to us, Chassidim, if you have any idea how much I yearn to cast off this physical body, I never yearned to cast off my physical body, and I've certainly never looked forward to and yearned for death by torture. But people at a level which is way beyond me, well, are way beyond me. I think you could anticipate the Jewish people the year after the Exodus, when they have recovered from the terrible sin of the Egel Azov, when they've been counted, when the Shekhinah, the presence of God, is amongst them, then these are people who are at a very, very different level. And when they saw the presence of God coming down to Mount Sinai, he was surrounded by angels. How many angels? 600,000 angels. That should ring a bell. There were 600,000 Jews who stood at Mount Sinai ready to get the Torah. And we aspired to replace the role of the angels, to be the replacement, and in fact to be in a higher level than the angels, as the Alshich was going to say, because we would reach a spiritual level which is higher than theirs, much higher than theirs, because we are physical beings as well as spiritual beings. Both exist symbiotically and simultaneously. And that means that we would reach a spiritual level greater than the angels, even though there is a negative, a physical component that we have to overcome that they don't have to overcome. And the Jewish people indeed hoped to replace the angels, that we would be the place where God would be manifest and seen. It's the ultimate role of the Jewish people. It's the ultimate light to the nations, the inspiration, spiritual inspiration to the whole world. And that's where I can turn the page of the Alshich and we can start to read this. And here we go. So let me explain, he says. So the rabbi saying Medrash Rabbah, and this is Medrash Rabbah and Shiur, where there is a posuk. And the posuk says the following thing. Shiur Hashem, you'll find it in Beis and Dalet. And the posuk says, interesting, B'digloi alai ahava. His flags were for me a symbol of love. So again, Kabbalistically, when the angels came down from heaven, how did they come down? They came down in 4 camps. And the camps of angels, 600,000, if you divide that therefore by 4 camps, with 3 head angels, I'm not sure, well, I think the non-Jewish word calls them archangels. I think that's what it means, like archdiocese, arching, supreme general angels who were in charge of each of the camps of angels. 3 archangels, if that's a legitimate word, I'm sorry if it's not, for each of the 4 divisions of the angels that came down surrounding God. And they had flags. So from a Jewish point of view, the first arrival of the concept of a flag which denotes exactly who and what a people or a legion is, arrives with an insight to angels having flags. And we wanted to be that. We wanted to have flags as well. And you probably know that when they were in the desert, then the camps of the Jewish people, I have here an old drawing of the I don't know if you can see this. If you can see this, is very old. This was when my kids decided to copy this. But this is the camp of the Jewish people. Right, so here we've got in the north is, here's the Safan there. There was 3 camps of the Jewish people: Naphtali, Asher, and Dan. And then Mizrach, Zevulun, Yisachar, and Yehuda. And then Reuven, Shimon, and Gad. Reuven, Shimon, and Gad. Oh, that rings a bell. Because we just said that when it counts the Jewish people here, it's out of the order. Reuven, Shimon, and should Livy's out of it, should say they said Yehuda. No. Reuven, Shimon, and Gad. Because Reuven, Shimon, and Gad, let's not miss out the next one I can't see, of course, Binyamin, Manasseh, and Ephraim were there at the west. So the west, the east, north, and the south. And here you have the Shevet Levi, the Levim, camped round the Mishkan in the middle. And the space between that, I haven't put them all together, there's a space between Shevet Levi camping round the Mishkan, and then 12 miles back, the rest of the Jewish people. And in the middle, you've got the Mishkan itself, and you have obviously Hashem, the presence of Hashem, and Moshe Rabbeinu going in there to speak to Hashem, calling him Kippur, the very highest levels. That is what's going on here. The Jewish people aspired to replace the Malachim and therefore arrange themselves into regiments or divisions that echoed and mirrored that which they saw when he came down to Mount Sinai. 3 heads of each of the 600,000 divided by 4. And therefore, that's the number of angels. But they had 3 heads, and so the Jewish people had 3 heads as well. It's talking about the flags of the Jewish people, each with their own unique quality to bring to the Jewish people, to make the unity of the Jewish people. Remember, I think it's something we talked about before. Rabbi Desta certainly talks about this a lot. That the Degolim, the device on the degel, on the flag of each of the Jewish people, reflected the blessing which Jacob Avinu gave to each one. So Yehuda's role is going to be the kings of the Jewish people, and Levi has got to be the priests of the Jewish people. The device, the design of the flag reflected that particular role. Right. Similarly here, they're going to be in 4 camps with 3 leaders. That's Reuven, Shimon, the heads of the camps. And they're going to be a copy. Now, that's not in the normal chronological order, because it's a copy of what they saw the angels coming down. They want to replace the angels. And indeed, had they not brought back the band of pork through the spies, they would have replaced the angels. But let me read the Alshich, because I've been going on a little bit too long. So he says the following thing. Because the Jewish people were in Mount Sinai, Rosh Shiur al-Arba Machamis Malachim. They saw the Shekhinah, so the presence of God, resting in 4 camps of angels, or surrounded by 4 camps of angels, I should say. Assume Arba Degolim, and they all had flags. Degel Michael, and the flag of Michael, Degel Gavriel, Degel Nuriel, and Degel Raphael. So 3 great angels. Now again, I once heard somebody who actually got a degree in angelology. I think it was called malachology or something like that. And he had studied angels. Strange. So anyway, so the four supreme angels are Michael, Gavriel, Nuriel, and Raphael. Now, the Nesava, and they desired this. They had an ambition. They aspired. That's the best word. They aspired. And they said, if only we could be that. If only we could replace the angels. That's a great aspiration, to reach the level of an angel, to have defeated your Yetzer Hara to such a degree, even when you're encased still in a physical body, with all the times and all the physical desires that weaves into the part of your psyche, of your personality, of who you are. It's obviously a much greater challenge to defeat that if you're an angel and you don't have them. The seven of if only we could form 4 camps, and the Shekhinah could be amongst us, which, as I just showed you in the diagram, was exactly what they achieved for a while. And when the Pasuk says in Shir, and his degolim were to me as a symbol of love, just like the counting is a symbol of love, when the Jewish people wanted and desired and aspired to replacing the angels, Hashem said, okay, you can, and arranged us into those camps. So therefore, and this is, of course, sorry, this is originally when standing in Mount Sinai. I've not yet got to the spies yet. When standing in Mount Sinai, that's how we were arranged. That's the way that we were. And had we not made the Egel Azov, then that's the way it would have stayed. And the Kashaya Lamachris Yom Kippurim, but when Moshe Rabbeinu goes back up and gets Hashem to forgive us and comes down in Yom Kippur, then Shabbat, the Luchas Shnias, they brought down the second set of Luchas, set of tablets, the Kashrus Maisa Mishkan, and with the instructions now to make the Mishkan, which is the repairing of the damage that the Egel Azov was created. Again, it's going to be a platform by which Hashem will demonstrate his love, his ongoing love, his forgiveness of the Jewish people for what they've done wrong. Then at that point, the Natafla bit in Yonim ad Rosh Chodesh Nisan, and that process of repairing the damage and preparing the Mishkan, which is the apology accepted by God, and the demonstration is a Mishkan, where he will now once again let them have that desire and a place where they will be able to dwell amongst them. It was Rosh Chodesh Nisan, and that was B'Shana Hashinis in the second year. In the second year, the Sesel Mitzrayim, they went out from Egypt, the Shoshim Yom Acha HaKamas Mishkan, a whole month after HaKamas Mishkan. But that goes back to the other question the Alshich asked. Why not Rosh Chodesh Nisan himself? Why not count them in Rosh Chodesh Nisan of the second year itself? When the Shekhinah actually dwelt there and they got their desire, they got what they wanted. Why should it be that the counting of the Jewish people only occurs afterwards? So here the Alshich says something very interesting. And this is the bit I'm going to read to you. I said it's going to give you a headache because it sounds like a baffling explanation. But then I'll break off hopefully bring this to life. The reason is because, why? Let's go back to our first question. Why is it gives us such an explanation for when this occurred? It was in the Midbar, it was in the Oil Moed, and it was in the second year, in the second month of, why is it like that? He says, the reason that the golden calf occurred was because it was too much and too sudden for the Jewish people. The 7 weeks that we've just gone through, after all, this is just after Shavuos, which we celebrate, 7 weeks of the Jewish people coming out of Egypt, coming to Mount Sinai, getting the Torah, and then losing it again through the eagle is off. That all occurred because it was too sudden, too much, too soon. And after the Jewish people hear God speak for the second time, the second commandment, they turn around and say to Moshe, "But this is too much for us. We can't take this." In fact, as you know, the Medrash actually says they all died. Realizing this was too much, it was too abrupt, it was too sudden, Hashem says, right, let's not make the same mistake again. Let's not repeat the process. Let's make it a much longer period. Let's make it a year, in actual fact, a year from Rosh Chodesh Nisan of the first year to the second year. That's when the Shekhinah is going to dwell amongst them. But a little bit more, actually a month later, than is actually going to be counted. So that will allow it to be Bahadroga, level after level after level. And there was, indeed, as I just showed you in that little design I showed you, in the middle was the Mishkan. Surrounding the Mishkan was the Levim, or on a higher spiritual level. They are the priests, the Kohanim, were going to work in the Mishkan. And then 12 miles back, then there's going to be the rest of the Jewish people. In other words, there's a buffer between the intensity of the presence of God and the ordinary Jewish people. Is going to be a buffer. Don't try and do too much too soon. That's the message. We're going to delay this second connection between God and the Jewish people to such a degree that they're going to be protected. Aha, all right, fine. Well, the obvious question is, why did Hashem make it so quick? Why did he make it so quick in the first place? If it was guaranteed to fail. I said that he's not going to make the same mistake again, but God doesn't make mistakes. So therefore he must have known it was going to fail. And indeed he did. Now this takes us back to something the Alshich has said not too long ago in one of our other sharing. He quotes the Gemara, and the Gemara says that, that even if it is the case that Hashem guarantees the circumstances that tzaddik will meet in his or her life to make sure they don't stumble and trip and fall, protecting them along the way, even to the extent that he will protect them, that their cattle doesn't, or their cow or sheep or whatever, doesn't stick its head through the fence and eat grass from somebody else's field, technically theft. If that's what Hashem does when it comes to the animals of tzaddikim, then this Jewish people who came out from Egypt and 7 weeks later stand on Mount Sinai and reach the highest level, why did he not protect them that they didn't come crashing down, which they did? If he protects the cattle of the Jewish people, why not protect the cattle of the people themselves? Why was that generation, as it were, fated to fail? And then the Gemara goes on to say, and the same question with regards to, instead of a generation, to an individual, David and Melech. Can David, Hashem withdrew his protection from him so that the story of Bathsheba would occur, which the world sees, even to this day, as being a classic example of adultery and the failure of a faithful servant of God who becomes unfaithful with somebody else's wife and unfaithful to God. What we, of course, call Chil Hashem. Why didn't he protect him? You know, the famous story, David and Melech came out, a bird flew by and he grabbed his bow and arrow and he fired at it to see if he could hit it, I suppose. And the Sultan, says the Medrash, diverted his arrow so that it cut the cord that was holding a blanket, hiding Bathsheba, who was bathing, obviously naked, and her full beauty was revealed to him, which led to the whole thing of David and Bathsheba. The Sultan was able to change the angle of the arrow to cut the cord so that this would happen. Why don't Hashem move the trajectory of the arrow just a millimeter so it didn't cut the cord, and this whole story wouldn't have happened? In 2 occasions, Hashem withdraws his protection from the Jewish people. One is for the whole Jewish people, causing the disaster of the golden calf. The other one is from an individual. And this is what the answer is given as follows. If you live in a generation, and I'm saying this year just when it's been announced that there's a ceasefire between Hamas and Israel, which I'm not sure, even though both sides are claiming victory. I think in the great scheme of things, Jewish people don't feel happy about winning a war, even when they do win a war, and certainly the massive outpouring of anti-Semitism is unparalleled in my lifetime. Very, very scary times, in fact. If that is the case, you might think, oh, we were in a generation that's really in trouble. Maybe Hashem has washed his hands of us. Well, no. You're supposed to look back and see a generation that was so great and yet failed so spectacularly that Hashem threatened to wipe them out and start again from Moshe. And yet, as we said before, was still forgiven, counted anew, elevated anew. Of course, went on to make a mess of that, but Hashem can forgive you for that. If you're an individual who makes a mistake, even one which is quite as dramatic and public as David HaMelech, there is still hope for you too. You can do tshuva. Hashem, the reason Hashem didn't protect the Jewish people is in order to allow that precedent to be set. But really, therefore, he allows them to do it so quickly to allow the failure to inspire us, but also teaches that to do it and secure it properly, it has to be stage after stage after stage. So therefore, so let me go back to the Alshich with you. Ki haflogas kedushas yesh b'Yisrael, b'yosem ki Shiur hazeh kenoda, ki al kein miyisachto baruch l'omar shishim revuah. The Jewish people were 600,000 Jews who stood at Mount Sinai. Then some of the Jews were killed for what they did wrong. Now we come to the counting of the Jewish people. 600,000 Jews are going to replace 600,000 Malachim, but now we have a deficit because lots of Jews were killed as a consequence of that. Now there's going to be another counting of the Jewish people, and guess what? The 600,000 number has been recovered. It's made up. Now each one is able to parallel the role of the 600,000 angels and the Jewish people. It's the Rosh, count the head. It's in the singular. Why not Roshim? Because the essential ingredient in order for holiness to occur to the Jewish people is unity, is Achdus. There are 12 tribes, and actually, once you subdivide Yosef into two tribes, which of course they were subdivided, then it becomes 13, and the gematria of the word 13 is Echad. The very diversity of the Jewish people, the different roles of the Jewish people, all, however, aiming in one direction, a bit like a classical orchestra, the violins, the woodwind, the brass, the percussion, all very clearly different roles, but yet with one conductor in the middle, they're all playing and coming together to harmonize and make beautiful music. That unity, the counting has to be called Echad. They will be all one. It's got to be in the second year, in the second month of the second year. It's got to be geographically set up in the Mishkan. God speaks in the Mishkan to Moshe. In the Bamidbar, that's where they had the desire for God to speak to them. But it's got to be, as I showed you in that map, there's got to be a buffer. There's got to be a buffering so we don't try and do too much, achieve too high a goal too quickly. We'll fall flat in our face. Okay, that's a glimpse of the Alshich for this week. I wish you all a peaceful week, a successful week. Klal Yisrael should know no more horror and terror, whether in Eretz Yisrael or outside Eretz Yisrael. And I look forward to giving you our second shiur next week. Good Shabbos.